Let's talk about simplifying tenant management. What's up, y'all? Welcome to Lionshare Bookkeeping Landlord CFO. I'm Ben Day, and we want to begin to unpack the accounting and finance, back office, and automation of real estate investing businesses. Fix, flip, wholesale, you name it, we've done it, and we want to help you scale up the finance of that business. Now, today I want to talk about simplifying the tenant management. At the end of the day, pretty much every person we've met in the real estate space wants to own rentals, but more than that, they want to own rentals if it'll be easy. And that's where we begin to lose some of these more focused and streamlined entrepreneurs who say, hey, I only want to wholesale. It's likely because they used to own rental property and it was a nightmare and they just were not ready for it. It stressed them out. And then they realized how much money they could make in their business model that they understood, and they decided to scale that instead. And that's fine. We love that for them. That's a really solid financial strategy that we want people to double down on. Building one business as thoroughly as you can is always the best plan. At some point, though, everybody wants to begin to own some passive income. Like, everybody thinks it'd be really cool if somebody was just like paying off a house and paying them cash and paying for the repairs so they could go sit on a beach. But in order to get there, we have to have a really simple system. So instead of spending this time today talking about taxes or finance, let's talk about the tech and the automation a little bit on this process. Now, full disclosure, what you can find down below, they aren't sponsoring this video or anything, but we really like Tenant Cloud. And so you can find an affiliate link for them below this video. Tenant Cloud is primarily, as of this recording, it is a free software that will help you track rents and maintenance requests and all kinds of property information for free online in the cloud. And then for like a very tiny fee compared to other property management softwares, it will then let you do things like collect rent online and do all kinds of other features. And it will then take all of that information and sync to QuickBooks Online so that you can get your bookkeeping done in real bookkeeping software that can then get handed off to a CPA who understands what's going on. And your accounting team doesn't have to stop everything to decipher your property management system. And so we really like Tenant Cloud. And then, so please, by all means, go check it out. We've got a link down below. But here's really kind of the items that how to simplify your tenant management, the items that you need to have in place in order to make that happen. And really, number one, the first thing that you need in order to simplify tenant management is that you need one way, and it should be online. And that's just for me. That's my flair. I believe that if you're going to manage properties, especially if you're going to manage them yourself, whatever management system you're using should be online. Unless your plan is to pick up your big old desktop and carry it with you every time you go on vacation or leave the house, having an offline pen and paper property management system, it just does not scale well. It might be fine for you when you have 2 or 3 properties. If you're really smart, you might even be able to handle a dozen or 2 dozen properties just in your head and a sheet of paper. But that sounds more and more like a job the bigger it gets. And if you don't want to have a job running your real estate business, if you want to simplify your tenant management, what you really need then is one way to get to everything and manage the whole portfolio. And it should be online so that it'll travel with you. Now, I'm not saying that you should only rent to tenants who are willing to work with an online property management system. Depending on where you live, that could be very illegal to discriminate that way. However, if you decide that you're only going to use a property management system that is online, and then you have tenants that decide to mail in checks, that's on them. But now you know that you have a system and you just need to have a way to receive those checks and book them. So at the end of the day, while we can make it easy for the tenants to get stuff done, we're ultimately long-term making it easier for you. Your tenant has a responsibility for 1 check a month. You could potentially have a responsibility for hundreds of checks a month. And so however your business is going to scale the easiest is what we're really putting the priority on here. So again, you need to have one way. Don't have a little bit over here and a little bit over here and all these different Excel spreadsheets. Have one way that you're managing your business. In this case, we think through Tenant Cloud for the operations and QuickBooks for the accounting. Have it all flow through. Everything's connected. Have it online so that you can absolutely go on vacation. You can leave town and you don't have to worry about putting short-term property management in place or any property management in place, because everything just works the way that it should. Tip number 2 on here is money and maintenance. We want to need to figure out really how can we begin to automate as much of our tenant relationships as we can. And at the end of the day, that tenant relationship is 99.9%. How are we collecting the rent? What are we doing when stuff goes wrong? And so for us, again, it's all about automating that step. And really for like rent collection, we already know automating rent would be easiest if they would just pay online. You can set up an auto pay where, it's like, hey, every month I need you to pull $700 out of my account. Please and thank you so much, whatever. Your tenant can forget about it. You can forget about it. Deposits just happen. Everybody's happy, right? That's always the best way to do this. If you can't automate your rent collections like that, there are other systems and services that you can use though. One of the things that we were really excited about for a while was a service called Pay Near Me or like AMS Billing. There's some other different softwares like that and their competitors around where your tenants can go and pay rent in cash at like a 7-Eleven or a CVS. And so if you're interested in something like that, if you have a lot of tenants that pay a lot of cash, they're just not tech savvy, what have you, look into setting up a system like that. If you have enough tenants, you can begin to form a vendor relationship where for a tiny fee, somebody else will collect the cash and deposit it for you, whether that's a big vendor or maybe it's just a local relationship that you establish with somebody. But however, you can begin to automate that cash and the recording of that, right? We don't just want to have a whole bunch of deposits coming into an account with no like address or tenant information. It's just cash. We don't want that. That's terrifying, especially on your bookkeeping, right? But what we do want to begin to put in place here is some sort of automatic system where not only is the rent getting paid, but we know who is paying it. If you can automate that piece, like through Tenant Cloud or using some other vendors, it's going to make your life much easier. Same thing on the maintenance. If there's one phone number that your tenants can call and say, hey, something is broken, or there's one place they can log in and say, hey, I need a little help with this, that's just going to make everything easier because then that is one phone and one login you can give to somebody long-term and say, hey, would you just watch this? And when something happens, handle it. Like that's all that you really need in that place. You need somebody to answer a phone and then call your preferred vendor to get out there and fix stuff. And you can put that in place for pretty cheap if you needed to. Professional property management does a whole lot. If you're trying to manage in-house, you'd have to handle an employee, but you can begin to build your team fairly simply without spending 10% on that employee. So really having that automated money and maintenance system is going to help you really simplify your tenant management. Now, if you decide to go with a property manager, obviously they're going to handle all of this for you and they'll be your one way, they'll be online and they'll have the money and they'll be easy to handle for the maintenance and all of that will be there. And that's really the simplest way to do this. But when you're building it yourself, these are the pieces that you need to make sure that you have in play. Our third tip on simplifying tenant management and really simplifying your real estate rental business is to make sure that everything connects. Don't lock yourself in to one software. I spend a lot of time talking about this because we see it happen all the time as people decide that they're going to be all in on one platform and then that platform does one thing really well and screws up everything else. And what you're left with is something that you are married to that you can't get out of. Maybe you spent a whole bunch of money and you're now like affiliated with the software or what have you, or maybe it's just an absolute beast and you have 200 units running through a property portfolio or a property management software that you hate, that you can't use, that isn't giving you what you need. And now you have to figure out how to convert all of that stuff in the middle of the year when you've got reports that are due and stuff that's due to go out. We want to avoid all of that. What we like to do is pick out individual softwares like Tenant Cloud that is really good at managing tenants from a landlord's perspective. There's no like property manager reporting for partners. There's none of that. There might be, but that's not what they do primarily. What they do primarily is help landlords collect money, right? That's like collect rent, handle the maintenance requests, and then push out reports to something else that can handle the actual reporting at a really high level and a professional volume. And that's why we like Tenant Cloud so much, is we see that they can collect rent and handle the maintenance requests. They can do all the stuff that we need in order to run the business. And then you can just turn around, dump all of that stuff into QuickBooks Online. And if at some point you realize, hey, I don't really like QuickBooks, you can just switch to a new accounting software. That's not a big deal. Or if you decide at some point you don't like Tenant Cloud, you can just switch to something else later, but you're not married. Your accounting doesn't have to change or your operations doesn't have to change because you didn't didn't like one of the two pieces. We really like this model, especially when you're trying to simplify your whole life. A lot of people we know are committed, diehard to things like, so like our favorite thing is like, hey, QuickBooks Online doesn't work for real estate. Only use QuickBooks Desktop. Well, that advice we think is wrong. Like that's not been our experience. We do the bookkeeping for over 40 entities in real estate currently right now, every day, month over month, year over year, and all of them are in QuickBooks Online. We're able to get the exact numbers we need at any moment. What we believe then is that this advice that QuickBooks Online is bad comes from a place where it used to be years ago, not fully developed, and it just didn't work. And so we've got all of these CPAs who didn't want to change, and they said, don't use online for real estate, only use desktop, and that advice is just carried forward. Software updates over time. QuickBooks is now developed into something that you can use really easily. In the same way that the property management space has developed over time. It used to be that the best property management system in town was Buildium. Buildium's still great. It's still fine, but there's now so many competitors in that space that are actively developing new solutions that it just doesn't make sense to go all in on one platform anymore at all. The future of technology is interconnectivity. Everything talks to each other. Everything shares information. We don't want to get just totally stuck in one solution when tomorrow something could come out that's brand new and shiny and does everything that you need it to do and replaces all the other stuff that like you wish that your current solution would handle. Like new technology just comes out all the time. And so we don't want to get stuck in one thing. We always want to be innovating and looking for the next way to really maximize our efficiency, automate as much as we can so that we can, effectively make more money and have a much simpler tenant management system. Listen, what did you find the most helpful out of this content? We love the technology in space and real estate. Whatever questions you have, we'd be happy to answer in a next video. So let us know down below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video.